back to the Movement Professional Podcast. I'm Dr. Chris Lab. So today I want to touch on the concept of non-exercise activity, or another way to say it is to create movement when otherwise you'd be normally still. So movement in typically positions of inactivity. And an easy way to think about this that can be helpful to stay consistent with it. So I'm going to talk about the 5 C's of non-exercise activity. And this is going to be a way to try to stay active throughout the course of the day and appreciate how important that is. So even if you're somebody who's quite active throughout your life, where you get to the gym quite often, you have a nice exercise routine, but you have a job where you have to be still for a long period of time, a lot of times it's the stillness that can break you down. It's the stillness that leads to aches and pains that become chronic. And it can become quite frustrating because you're doing everything you can to try to be as healthy as possible, but daily life just gives you so much time where you're still that you need a strategy to try to create some motion and create some activity in those times of stillness to really bring everything together and help to improve the overall health. All right, so the first C in this 5-step thought process would be consistency. So one of the number one most important things to do is not just get exercises that you can do throughout the course of the day, but find a way to sprinkle them in consistently. The actual exercise that you do to vary up your position throughout the course of the day is less important, in my opinion, than the consistency of just moving throughout the day in times that you would otherwise be still. Nice rule of thumb is 20 minutes of stillness for 2 minutes of movement. All right, so if you can do that as consistently as possible throughout the course of the day, you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to actually have a lot more energy in what you do when you would normally be still. So most of the time when we're talking about stillness, we're talking about computer work in some form. So especially if we're thinking about it from a work perspective, if we're thinking about it from an entertainment perspective, while we're watching TV, oftentimes we could be moving more consistently while we're watching TV because our attention doesn't have to be on the task at hand. We just have to take in the entertainment. So there's plenty of opportunities to move while taking in information, whether it's informative information or entertainment information, but trying to be as consistent as possible and have some type of strategy for that. So 20 minutes of stillness for 2 minutes of movement. It's a rule of thumb. It can obviously be varied in different ways, but to appreciate that it can't be one bout to really help yourself in the long run. It really has to be consistent bouts throughout the course of the day. So short bouts frequently and ends up being another mantra to live by when we're talking about this type of activity. Number 2 would be change. So change is just another way to say vary. Like you need to vary up your position frequently. You need to vary up your movement frequently. So overuse by nature is doing something that is not varied, right? So it's either the same movement too much or the same position too much. So when we are consistently doing different exercises, we're changing. So that could mean if we're sitting, we stand up. That could be if we're sitting, we lie down, or we do exercises that incorporate being in different positions on the ground. Just creating change as frequently as possible and doing that consistently. That's the second C. The third C would be to challenge yourself. And I think this is one that is underestimated quite a bit because oftentimes these type of movements throughout the course of the day, they seem like we just want to get up and I'm going to go from sitting to standing. And that can be useful, but we really want to try to bring some type of challenge to our muscles, challenge to our circulatory system. So if we can get up and change our position frequently and then add some type of challenge to that, where we actually have to make our muscles feel like they're doing a little bit of work. And it certainly doesn't have to be a full-blown workout, but just getting the muscles to fire in a way that they would normally not be fired. Bring a little bit of fatigue to certain areas, depending on the movement that we're doing. I think that is underestimated, and make that important. So it might not be 2 reps that you're doing, but it'll be 10 reps. But like you want to find the amount of repetitions that bring the onset of a challenge to either the circulatory system or the muscular system. And in many ways, even the nervous system. So, you can get up and try things that affect your balance and challenge your balance a little bit. I think that helps to not only just change the body position from what you're doing, but it can help to switch your gaze. It can help to flip the focus. Your mind may have to come off of your work for those 2 minutes that you're doing these movement endeavors. And all of that matters to try to refresh the system so that you can go back to work, but you really did have a rest from what you were doing. And then you can hopefully get back into your focus work with a bit more focus. Similar to challenge is to circulate. So as we're doing some movements, it could be helpful to try to create some type of flow with our movements that actually help to naturally feel like they improve our circulation. So that could be something that we try to keep in mind. Now, a couple different ways to think about doing this. One, we can just move our limbs in a faster and more fluid process to try to get our heart rate up a little bit to just try to improve circulation. So I like to explain this to clients as think about getting warm. Think about actually increasing the temperature of your body when you're moving, and not to the point of a full sweat for the sake of what we're talking about here, but actually try to increase the heat in your body when you're doing 2 minutes of movement. So that goes hand in hand with challenge, but this is a little bit more specific, is that we actually want to feel like we're creating a little bit of heat in our body. The other piece of circulation would be, as we change our position, we may want to mess with gravity a bit and elevate our limbs in a way that would be opposite to what we're doing for a long period of time. So if we're sitting, gravity is pulling things south towards our feet. So if we can lie on our back and elevate our feet and invert our bodies in different ways, that changes circulation by having gravity be an aid. And then the fifth C would be curiosity. So having this idea of consistently changing position throughout the course of the day, but not trying to be too structured with it, but just to say, okay, for 2 minutes, I'm going to do various things that change my body position, that create a little bit of challenge to my muscles, that create more circulation through the body. I'm going to find different ways to do that. I want to try to play with different angles. I want to explore joint angles that might be stiff that I didn't even realize were stiff. So there's an opportunity by doing this type of activity where we are doing short bouts of movement throughout the course of the day to understand our body in ways that we wouldn't if we're just going to the gym and doing a structured program. So this is a time for curiosity. This is a time for exploration because it's going to be quite a bit. It adds up over the course of a day if you are able to be consistent with doing small bouts of movement throughout the course of the day. So don't underestimate that value of just staying curious and exploring what your body feels good with, what it feels like it needs. Hopefully that was useful. If you have any questions, you can go to movementprofessional.com. I'll see you next time.